All right, welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a topic that is, quite frankly, profoundly heavy, but we're going to look at it from a strictly analytical, structural perspective. We're examining the really dark realities of extreme penal and interrogation systems globally. Now, we aren't here to sensationalize any of this. Instead, we want to understand the mechanics behind it. Our sources detail exactly how state-sanctioned systems use highly calculated methods to literally dismantle the human mind and body. It's a fascinating and admittedly unsettling look at the systematic breakdown of who we are. So let's get right into it. Industrialized erasure and the science of breaking human identity. So how fast can a human identity be erased? I want you to just pause and imagine for a second the absolute fragility of your own identity. You probably think of your personality, your memories, your whole sense of self as incredibly permanent, right? I mean, they're the absolute foundation of who you are. But what if that foundation isn't actually set in stone? What if it's incredibly vulnerable to being rapidly, and I mean literally calculatedly, dismantled? Well, as we dig through the source material today, you're going to see that identity erasure isn't some slow, gradual erosion. Under the right horrifying conditions, it happens at a terrifying speed. Actually, this rapid erasure kicks off the literal moment of arrival. Step 1 is the arrival itself. In the world's most feared prisons, new arrivals aren't exactly greeted with a welcome packet and a handbook. Instead, they face this chaotic, completely terrifying welcome party. And right away, step 2, the rules are suspended. This is absolutely critical to understand. Knowing the rules gives a person a sense of control, a sense of predictability. By suspending those rules, the system creates this massive vacuum of terror. And that leads directly into step 3, identity stripping. By thrusting a human being into this hyper-violent, totally unpredictable environment, the system systematically strips away who they are in mere minutes. There's literally no time to adapt. Your identity is just shocked right out of you. This brings us to our next section, state-sanctioned breaking points. So these state-sanctioned breaking points generally go down one of two primary avenues. First up, we have physical destruction. The sources point to places like the Sidnaya prison in Syria, which is quite literally referred to as a human slaughterhouse. In these places, the environment itself acts as a weapon for sheer physical devastation. But then compare that to the second avenue, psychological manipulation. Here we see techniques like the Mr. Big operation. This is where undercover operatives create these incredibly elaborate, completely fictitious crime syndicates just to lure and trap suspects. Or consider the Reed monologue. These tactics aren't about breaking bones at all. They are covert, highly psychological interrogation tactics designed to corner the mind and force a total collapse of willpower. So you have two entirely different approaches. One, viscerally physical, the other deeply mental, but both are utilized by state systems with the exact same end goal, breaking a human being. Moving on to our next key concept, engineering the human mind. At the absolute core of this entire system is something called behavioral engineering. By definition, this is the specific scientific methodology used to systematically dismantle and manipulate a suspect's mind and body. If there's one thing you take away from this explainer, it should be this. What happens in these dark corners of the world is not just some random chaotic violence. Not at all. It is a science. It is behavioral engineering applied with absolute, calculated precision to completely break down a human being. They're essentially treating the human psyche like an engine, one that can be systematically taken apart piece by piece. Psychologically speaking, this engineering is applied with razor-sharp precision. Let's look at the Reed technique, for example. Interrogators use a very specific tool here, a monologue to justify a suspect's crime. Just think about the psychological weight of that for a second. The interrogator isn't just sitting there asking rapid-fire questions. Instead, they launch into a calculated, continuous monologue where they actively offer justifications and excuses for the crime the suspect allegedly committed. Why does this matter? Well, because it drastically lowers the suspect's mental defenses. It makes the abnormal suddenly seem logical. By projecting sympathy and rationalization, the interrogator engineers a scenario where confessing actually feels like a relief. It completely bypasses the suspect's normal self-preservation instincts. It's a psychological trap. But as we've seen, behavioral engineering doesn't just stop at psychology. It dictates physical destruction as well. Take the flying carpet method. The sources describe this horrifying practice where a prisoner is secured to a hinged board, that's the carpet, and then folded. They literally bend the prisoners until their joints tear apart. Now, it's obviously horrifying to even describe, but if we look at it from the clinical perspective of behavioral engineering, it's a method specifically designed to induce a physical trauma so overwhelming that the mind simply cannot maintain its cohesion. The physical structure is completely destroyed to guarantee the absolute destruction of the psychological structure. Let's shift gears and look at the bigger picture with the industrialized erasure reframe. You see, this isn't punishment. This is a massive paradigm shift, and honestly, it's the core of what our sources are really telling us. When we normally think of extreme penal systems, our minds naturally default to the concept of a penalty, right? We think of a criminal paying a debt to society. But the ultimate goal of these specific methods goes far, far beyond any traditional concepts of punishment or justice, because punishment implies a lesson. It implies that there is an actual person left over at the end of it to understand what they did wrong. The grim reality of this phenomenon is the industrialized erasure of human dignity. First off, this is an industry operating on a massive institutional scale. It's not just localized torture. Second, it relies entirely on systematic breakdown. Remember that behavioral engineering we just talked about? It's a step-by-step, rigorously scientific process. And finally, the true, ultimate goal, the total erasure of identity. They don't actually want to punish the individual. They want to ensure that the individual ceases to exist entirely. The person who walked through those doors during that initial welcome party is systematically deleted from reality. All of this leaves us with a final, haunting question. If identity can be engineered away so scientifically, how permanent is who we are? We started off this explainer by asking how fast identity can be erased, and the data paints a pretty chilling picture. If our sense of self, our dignity, and our core personality can be systematically dismantled through behavioral engineering, physical destruction, and carefully calculated psychological monologues, then what exactly is human identity actually made of? It's a profound question to leave you with, and one that absolutely forces us to reconsider the true resilience of the human mind. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.